I've always been an energetic guy, right? But I think maybe I'm just a little bit crazy. And as far as finding that go factor, I can just keep digging deep and finding more, right? Okay, I'm just gonna break this next ridge. I'm gonna break this next ridge. I'm gonna get over this, right? And just keep going. And I don't get discouraged or bummed or whatever. I just keep powering it out. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit deranged.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspects of running and what helps people to achieve success, however they define it, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. Thank you to Hydro for sponsoring this episode. Hydro is an immersive workout experience designed to bring the physical, mental, and emotional experience of on-water rowing straight to your home. Hydro workouts are quick, efficient, and low impact. Rowing for just 20 minutes a day provides you with a full body workout, which engages 86% of your major muscle groups. For context, cycling engages 44%. Head to hydro.com to check them out. That's hydrow.com to learn more. Be sure to use the code FTLR100 to save $100 on your order. This episode is brought to you by Freedom Solar Power. When I first started looking into solar, I thought it would be a clunky and expensive process. I've learned it isn't nearly as hard as you think. Freedom Solar Power makes it simple. They provide a turnkey solution that is focused on educating their customers on the experience from installation to everyday use and savings. They ensure you have all the information needed to make sure going solar is right for you. From firsthand experience, it makes sense both financially and for the environment. With no down payment required, solar not only adds immediate value to your home, but it's also great for the environment and might even provide immediate savings, not to mention the year-end tax benefits, a credit of 26% this year. Freedom Solar operates in Texas, Colorado, Virginia, and Florida, and there are plenty of other great options nationwide. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode. Tracksmith is an independent running brand inspired by a deep love of the sport. Their spring collection is now available and features staples thoughtfully designed for this season of training. From their versatile session tops cut from a soft stretch knit to Lane 5 and Reggie short tights perfect for racing a marathon, these pieces are built to work as hard as you do. Tracksmith is a brand for committed runners like you and me, people who know that the best part of a busy day is squeezing in a workout. They offer products for training, racing, and rest days, which you know I'm a fan of, and create experiences that make running more rewarding, more connected, and more meaningful. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders with the code FORTHELONGRUN will receive free shipping, and 5% of the purchase amount will be donated to the Michael J. Fox Foundation to help find a cure and support those living with Parkinson's. Welcome back. I have Sandy Crittenden here in Boulder, Colorado, joining me for the podcast. Sandy, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Sandy was the first point of contact I had at a new sponsor I have on the podcast here, Freedom Solar. And Sandy walked me through his experience with solar, and we're going to get into all of that fun stuff. But the reason I'm having Sandy on the podcast is he's a pretty awesome runner and outdoor enthusiast in his own right. And we connected on that in our first chat. And so maybe let's start there, given this is a running podcast after all. Talk to me about your first run. Do you remember your first run?
Well, I guess going way back, my PE or gym coaches used to try to recruit me into track because I was quick running around playing soccer, but it never really stuck. I wanted to party and stuff in college and all that, but got a little older, had an ankle injury, and kind of after that, probably 07, 08 area, I kind of became a psychopath addict to the outdoors. So, I started mostly hiking, kind of figured out you can cover a little more ground if you're jogging, running. So went down that road, found a Spartan race, still doing that to this day. Probably started that in 2010. Did really well for a while in it until yeah, I still do well, but it's so competitive now. I can't make top 30 anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, a lot of running, a lot of big runs in the mountains. I'm originally from New England, so Maine, New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, endless access to running, handful of marathons, but mostly just pick a 20, 30 mile death march and run it, that sort of thing.
So you got the bug. You got the bug quickly
Yeah.
once you got out of team sports and track and whatnot. You ran. Do you remember the first time you ran more than 20 miles?
Sure. Yeah, it was probably probably the a presidential traverse in New Hampshire.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it is.
That's what, 28, 31?
I don't think it's that. I think it's like 22.
Yeah.
Well, it depends, right? There's extra credit you can do, but I think it's just a hair over 20. The logistics are a pain though, right? Because it's a traverse, and it takes a whole day basically to plant a car. So
You go up, down, and there's no. Is there a place to get water, or do you have to sort of bring a filter type
no,
deal?
there's some
Like
there's
the
some
huts.
yeah. So you can usually fill up there. And for me anyway, I'm running the down and the flat. I'm not running the up. Unless it's super casual. But that was probably the first time I really went like full out. Did that. That was cool. Then stepped up to the Pemi Loop, which is another famous one. Much easier logistics. But that one's like 31, 32, right? And you could bump that out to 40 or 50 if you want to just run that whole neighborhood, right? But yeah, so that was probably started doing all that stuff in like 12, 13, starting to get really silly.
So you're starting Spartans right when it starts to get super popular, right?
Yeah, I would say like in 2010, it was still small and private, right? It wasn't even like Reebok or any of the
Right.
big money behind it. So it was pretty small.
You ever
Right.
meet Joe DeSena at one of the races?
Yeah. I met him at the Vermont one once at the Vermont Beast. Nice guy. But yeah, so I started doing it then, and it didn't start to get big until like probably 14, 15. It started to get like kind of corporate.
And now your thing is just time in the mountains. I mean, you said something that I love so much. You're like, I work for 3 weeks and I take a week off, and I let the 20-year-olds fight for top spot.
That's certainly true.
And I love that. And to be able to have that kind of balance, to be able to have a place of work that, allows that, first of all, and just to be able to have that consistency when it comes to the outdoors. So talk to me about like your goals when it comes to the outdoors. Is it purely for fun? Are you trying to beat times? Are you doing it with people? Are you doing it solo? What's like, why are you doing it?
I'm not sure. I've been described by ex-girlfriends as an adrenaline junkie. So, you can make that argument, right? And sometimes I have a goal, an agenda, a time I want to beat. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm just doing whatever I want. I'll do a casual hike. I'll do a savage run. I'll sit on the beach and drink beer. Like the problem with Colorado, right, as you've obviously found, is there's so much variety. There's so much to do. It's easy to get distracted, right? So like, sure, I'm a trail runner first. Like that's my thing. But there's mountain biking and there's hiking and there's kayaking and everything that you could ever want to do. So it's easy to just kind of get sent off in a bunch of directions, right? So it kind of just depends on what I'm doing. Usually when I run heavy mileage, I generally go alone. I only know a handful of people that actually want to run 20, 30 miles in the mountains, right? There's only a few, right? But I'll go hike, 10, 15 all the time, right? That's easy. I've done a couple backpacking trips here, right? I did the collegiate loop pretty much right when I moved to the state.
That is the most gorgeous place. I drove to Ouray last summer, and I had to pull over right there because I was like, I'm going to crash my car. It's it's so beautiful.
It's insane. There's so much. The Weminuche, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, looks really cool. But last year I went to Idaho, right? So I've been kind of spreading out. This summer I'm going to Utah, do the Uinta, Highline Traverse. That looks pretty cool. So there's just so much to explore. It's literally a lifetime of exploration out here.
So you're out there mostly by yourself. And okay, so you get out of the car, you tie your shoes, You check the vest, make sure you got your car keys and snacks and whatnot.
Sure.
What are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about let's get to the top and get sun on my face, right? Yeah, no, I mean, I try to get amped up. Sometimes I'll listen to music, right? So that's fun, but I just kind of power it up. I just count the thousands of feet as I climb them, right? My little Garmin watch, and then I get to run. Love it.
You can't beat that. You also said you've done a bunch of marathons.
I wouldn't say a bunch, a couple.
More than one?
Yeah.
Why did you do that first one?
First one I was peer pressured into by coworkers. And of course, as luck would have it, right, we all showed up to the marathon. We all trained. We were all ready. We got there. We were getting our bibs. And everyone at my office switched to half marathon on day of.
Did they tell you that they were going to?
Yeah, they were all like, I don't know about all this. So I didn't. I ran the whole thing. And it was fun. It took me almost 4 hours, though. It wasn't impressive, you know. Road running is not as exciting for me. It's fun, but I love trails and rocks and jumping over roots, and this sort of feels like a video game, you know?
It does. And it's just like, I was talking with Shalane Flanagan a couple weeks ago. Shalane's a very accomplished athlete and has been doing it for 20 plus years. And she's like, we don't play. We don't play anymore. I'm playing running. And I think that it's such a healthy perspective to have that, like, we're not getting paid to run, but we're doing it for fun and we're doing it because it brings us joy. And I think there's so much I was having a conversation again about, like, why are we doing this, right? I follow a program, I follow a schedule, and there's really no point if I'm not enjoying it, right? It's like, sometimes it's really not comfortable. And many of the people who are listening are probably like, yeah, I agree. I also follow a schedule and I also do the runs that sometimes I don't want to do. And I think the point I'm trying to make here is, like, all of that stuff is so essential in the pursuit of everything you're talking about, right? Like, you're talking about all the fun stuff and all the fun things you get to do, but you can't really do that without the work, putting in that work behind it.
And even in the individual run, right? That first 1 to 3 miles, if you're doing a big run, it's fairly miserable, right? You're like, okay,
uphill.
Your lungs are like, let's go, let's figure this out, you know? But once you get into that, for me, it's like mile 7 is when my body starts to give me fancy drugs that I don't fully understand, right? And then you're just like, okay, I could do this all day, right? And you just keep going and going.
And then sometimes you do it all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the furthest you've run?
I think I did probably, there was like a modified Pemi loop I did that was probably like 35 or so. I felt pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad. I mean, I got out late, but that's probably the longest I've run. And on a road, just marathon.
Yeah. Do you want to go further?
Yeah, for sure. I need to hit 40 this year, without a doubt. I'd like to, see all these guys getting into the 100 area. Not sure my body can do it. Not sure my body can't do it. So I'll certainly try. But my goal is to break 40 this year, and not be like limping, right? So, but it'll undoubtedly be a trail run somewhere.
What you said, not sure I can do it, but also not sure I can't do it, is like the epitome of why I also want to run 100 one day. I stood at the start line of Western States in 2018 with Sally McRae, who's a professional trail and ultra runner, and has won races like Badwater, 135, and all these like wild things. And she's like, "Do you want to do this someday?" I was like, "Yeah." It's just like without thinking about it. And she was like, "Why?" Like, because I don't know that I can. And I've said it a million times, but I think anyone can run a marathon. I don't think anyone can race a marathon, but I don't think that's true for a 100-mile race. I don't think that everyone can do it. And I don't know if I can do it. And you don't know if you can do it. And I think that's the part that intrigues me the most.
Sure. And you meet people doing it, and you meet them more than me for sure, right? But I was doing actually collegiate loop a couple summers ago, and I'm setting up camp by myself. The rest of my crew is dead, gone, hiked out, right? Setting up camp by myself, starting a fire, right? Opening the whiskey. Guy comes running through with his flashlight. I'm like, "What mile are you on?" He's like, 69.
Nice.
I'm like, "Keep going, buddy. Keep going."
That's awesome.
And I feel like I probably could do that. So we'll find out.
What's the time frame on something like that?
For me? Oh God, I don't know. I mean, Hemi loop.
Sorry, timeline, not like time.
Oh,
Like
you
2
mean,
years, 4 years, tomorrow.
I mean, I've got to break 40 this year, and I'm turning 40 this year.
You're going to do it on your 40th?
Probably.
Nice.
Probably. It's October, so still plenty of sun.
Yeah.
Not too much snow. But yeah, I mean, 40 this year. We'll see. We'll see about 50 next year.
What I love about the trail community is it's just people doing it forever, right? Like I said, I was out in Uray and it was the middle of winter and I just saw these two people running uphill in the winter. It's snowing and they were just,
Doesn't
they
matter.
couldn't have been younger than 75.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, this woman could probably beat me up this hill. And we're at 7,000 feet and like, she is hard. Like that is like some shit. Like in a winter snow, in a snowstorm.
You see half of these, fastest known times are 50, 60-year-old guys.
Right.
Right. And girls.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
I think that's what's so cool about it. You don't necessarily need the speed. You need the tenacity and the like mental endurance in order to be able to do that. So what do you do to be able to complete these things? Or what is your, again, I don't think everyone could do this kind of stuff. And so what is it about Sandy that allows Sandy to do these kind of things?
I've always been an energetic guy, right? But I think maybe I'm just a little bit crazy. And as far as like, finding that go factor, like I can just keep digging deep and finding more, right? Okay, I'm just gonna break this next ridge. I'm gonna break this next ridge. I'm gonna get over this, right? And just keep going. And I don't get like discouraged or bummed or whatever. I just keep powering it out. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit deranged.
So you reference something that has like a formal psychological, I don't know what the word is, but it's called chunking. And it's like if you break up a hard task into smaller pieces, it's true in running, it's true in business, it's true in literally anything. It makes it easier to grasp. Like to think about going out and running 40 miles is a lot. But if you think about, all right, hit the next ridge, hit the next ridge, hit the next ridge, the like road running mantra is run the mile you're in. And it's like, it's so silly, but it's so simple at the same time that like you can't comprehend doing it all at once. But when you break it up, it's much more manageable.
For sure.
So where are you thinking about this 40 mile run?
I have some lines picked out in the Lost Creek Wilderness that I think I can line up to like 40, 41 almost exactly. I hear some of them are route finding a little. So I may go do a couple 20s or something and see if I can explore it.
Nice.
But that stuff melts early, and it's nice soft sand. Well, gravel roughly. So I was looking at that. But there's just endless options.
And do you do most of your adventuring in Colorado? You also said Utah and New England. And actually, I want to ask about your opinion between New England and the West.
Okay.
Let's hear it. You've mentioned a ton of
just like
scrambly ridges, scrambly runs out in New Hampshire and whatnot. Some people either love that stuff or they love the stuff out here, and you seem to like both.
I like them both, right? So New Hampshire, specifically New Hampshire, but I guess all of New England it's a bit more abrupt, right? It's like you're running on flat and then you're just hand over head climbing up, right? And you're climbing and climbing and climbing. And then you almost have to like pick a specific route that you can even run down because usually the route down so steep you can't run it.
Right.
So you have to pick like the long sweeping, right? I would say I like them both, right? Colorado's obviously very dry. And New England, there's water everywhere and you get a little more tree cover. So you're not just getting roasted in the sun. But I like them both. Honestly, I as far as like where I choose to live, of course, it's Colorado. There's no bugs and, don't let that secret out. But there's no bugs. There's all sun, gorgeous mountains in every direction. So for sure, I like living here. But I've only been here a few years. So I haven't explored it all by any means. But I've explored like every inch of the Northeast.
What brought you to Colorado specifically?
Mountains.
Yeah.
I mean, I found there's a list in the Northeast of mountains to hike and run. There's 115 or so. They call it the 111, but they've added some, right? But
new mountains have popped up.
Yeah, I guess they've just discovered them, right? No, they remeasured some stuff. Said, it's over 4,000.
That counts twice. Yeah,
exactly.
The plates have shifted.
So I pretty much hiked all of it, and I was finding myself running it and hiking it and looping it and just trying to find new creative ways to go over the same ranges. And at a certain point, I'm just like, I need some new stuff. So no offense at New England, it's amazing, but I came out here and there's plenty of new stuff.
Yeah, I used to visit here like once a quarter, and I would think about like how lucky these people. Again, I love New England too. I don't want to bash on New England and Boston in particular, but I came out here and I was like, this is incredible that people get this all the time. And today I ran out my front door and I was on trail in a mile, and like I never thought I'd have that kind of access, and it's incredible. What's been interesting about the last few years is you see people realizing that it's not all about work, and we need these things that fill our cups. And I've had so many people move out of cities into places like Boulder or Flagstaff or Tahoe, these places where access to nature is not taken for granted and is just readily available to anyone who wants to participate in it. And so I think that's super cool. And, obviously that's not available for everyone, but hopefully the trend is more of like, you can be wherever you want to be versus needing to be in a certain place.
No, you're exactly right. And to see like how much people embrace it out here, like it's, you're in Boulder, right? Super fit. Everyone's running all the time.
Yeah.
I'm up in Conifer. It's not much different. I've got trails a couple miles away. So it's a beautiful thing, right? There's more of a fit culture for sure, I would say, than New England. But, you get up into those White Mountains, you get up into Maine, and it's the same kind of people, right?
Yeah. So speaking of those kind of people, in one of our first conversations, it came up that you were a trail runner, came up that I was a trail runner, and we connected on that. And so you work at Freedom Solar.
I do.
And you're like, yeah, trail runners. Of course they're interested in solar. I can't remember exactly what you said, but you were talking about the intersection of people who are like go-getters and interested in doing things for themselves. Is this ringing a bell?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, that makes sense, right? I'm not sure how I worded it before either, right? But like, I mean, the reality is like people that are waking up early, right, getting up at 5 a.m. to go run 30 miles like a maniac, right? Like they're obviously highly motivated individuals, right? They're taking control of their fitness, of their life, of everything. And so it's no surprise that there's a lot of overlap between hardcore runners and people that are like, I'm sick of the shenanigans and I'm just going to put up my own solar and I'm going to handle this myself. So I don't think it's surprising.
How did you get connected to this company?
Actually, through a buddy. I mean, I knew I wanted to work at SunPower, right? And they just happened to be opening an office in Colorado. And so I kind of walked in there and said, hire me. And I was the first hire. So it was fun. And, props to them for allowing me a flexible schedule to go take a week off, right? I mean, last summer I did 5 week-long trips onto the West Coast and all over the place, right? Yeah. So, it was awesome. They work us really hard during when we're there, of course, right? But they allow us to really take some time, and it's a good reset,
Thanks again to Hydro for supporting the podcast. I've been enjoying my Hydro to fit in bonus cardio that doesn't take much time at all, as even a 10 to 15 minute row feels like a solid workout. It's a fun experience to be able to row on familiar routes or explore new ones on the water. Head to hydro.com, that's HYDROW.com to learn more. Be sure to use the code FTLR100 to save $100 on your order. Thanks again to Freedom Solar Power for supporting this episode of the podcast and our environment by providing an easy, green energy source. The buying process was fascinating and eye-opening, and I am excited to pay my learnings forward. If you're curious about going solar in your home, message me on Twitter or Instagram, and I'd be happy to help your journey by providing some great resources. Freedom Solar is a full-service solar company that's been installing solar panels and backup power systems since 2007. They operate in Texas, Colorado, Virginia, and Florida. Not in any of those states? Don't fret, my parents have the same panels from SunPower that were installed by a different company in Massachusetts. SunPower is the best in the business, and that's what Freedom Solar uses. I've enjoyed working with the whole team over at Freedom Solar, and I'm sure you will too. Thanks again to Tracksmith for supporting the podcast and their continued support of not just this podcast, but the running community in general. I'm proud to partner with Tracksmith, and they're going to donate 5% of your order to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for all orders, and you'll also get free shipping. The Michael J. Fox Foundation is dedicated to finding a cure and helping those living with Parkinson's. Both of my grandfathers have or had Parkinson's, and I'm grateful of Tracksmith's support for something so personal. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders with the code FORTHELONGRUN, one word, will contribute towards this donation. Their spring collection is now available and features staples thoughtfully designed for this season of training. So I came into learning about solar. My parents have solar on their house, but I was so confused. I was like, that seems really expensive. And my process was I walked into a Home Depot and the guy at the door said he was wearing, I forget what polo t-shirt he was wearing, but he said, have you ever considered solar? And I said, yes. And he was sitting in my living room 2 days later. And in that first conversation, he outlined the economics around what would happen if I chose financing or what would happen if I purchased it outright. And in that moment, I was like offended. I was like, why has nobody explained this to me? This makes so much sense. My specific example, I would have been saving $40 a month from day one.
Mm-hmm.
Not true for everyone, but that was if I went the financing route.
Sure.
So I'm curious, like, why is that? And I feel like I'm a pretty knowledgeable person and I know a lot of people who know a lot of things. And I had no clue. And maybe it's a knock on my dad because he didn't tell me how good of a deal it was. And he's probably listening. So hi, Dad. Just kidding. What's the communication barrier? Why do so few people know how beneficial it is?
I'm not really sure, right? I mean, we're so busy, right? That it's hard for me to understand that everyone doesn't already know, right? And sometimes I have to like reset myself when I'm talking to the customers, and I'm like, okay, let's go back to basics, right? But no, I mean, it's really a straightforward process, right? You pay for it and put it up, and then it pays back over a number of years, or you finance it. It pretty much pays for itself right away. And it is surprising though when you do meet with people and you show them how easy it can be, how quickly they're like, oh, that's it, right? They're like, oh, I thought it was going to be $200,000 or whatever, right? For sure, for some people it is.
If you have electric heating, it might be.
Yes, exactly. But no, it really is pretty simple, right? And if people are trying to move in a year, maybe it doesn't make sense or whatever, right? But even then, it sometimes does. So no, it's a very easy thing to sell. There's not much actual sales involved, as you might imagine. It's more like going around meeting people and having a lemonade on their deck and showing them how solar works. It's a pretty cool job.
Yeah, it's, I mean, what I get to do for work is get to help people feel better doing what they love. And what you're doing is you get to help people save money, do something good for the environment, and feel good about doing it. I've had the pleasure of interacting with not a lot, but a handful of people at your company, and everyone seems to like really just love what they're doing, which is super cool. And I'd say this isn't intended to be an ad, but it kind of is, because it's the kind of thing that when you look at the numbers, it's like, this makes sense, and it's good for the earth, and it puts you in control, right?
That's it. That's why it appeals to everyone, right? It's not just like environmentalists,
right?
Which for sure, that's a great angle, right? But like we deal with people that don't give up at anything about that, and they are just like, I'm tired of what the utility's doing. I want to be in control, alpha male status, right? Boom, perfect.
So I was talking with Kara, who you're going to be talking with, and we were running the other day, and we were talking about all things happening over the last couple of years, and the summary was basically people are selfish, and they really only need to be incentivized at a population level to do things that benefit them. And it's like, it kind of sucks to like boil it down to that, but that's what it's kind of boiled down to these days. And so it's cool to have something that allows someone to do something good for them that's also, good for the environment. My whole thing is like, you have people like, oh, don't eat meat. Oh, don't, you should recycle. Oh, you should, like, all these things are important, yes, but unless every single person is doing it at all times, it's a fairly small dent,
hard
right?
to move the needle.
It's hard to move the needle. And so at least personally, like I felt empowered that like, okay, I won't be consuming all of this electricity from other.
Coal and Pueblo.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
No, that's true. But like, humans respond to incentives, of course, right? But like, look at how much electric cars struggled until Elon was like, drive this thing, right? Then everyone's like, oh, okay, I'll drive this. Like, this is awesome. It's better.
Right. And then you're in Boulder and like every third car is a Tesla and the other third is a Subaru. And then there's some motley crew of the rest.
Yep. I broke down and bought a Subaru pretty much as soon as I moved here from a Tesla. I sold my Tesla.
Was it blue?
The Subaru is.
Right. Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. It's not Freedom Solar branded or anything like that.
One time that I was visiting Colorado, I followed the wrong blue Subaru from a trailhead and I ended up at the hospital. We were supposed to be going to breakfast and I ended up following the wrong car that drove to the hospital. I think it was actually the hospital right here. It was. That's really funny. What's been the coolest part of your job as it relates to the environment in particular? Because I think a lot of people listening to this are probably like, okay, cool, yeah, it makes sense. Move on. So I want to know, like, what gets you going?
So, it's funny. Obviously, I think we should all be doing our own part too. I'm not like a rabid environmentalist, right? But like, I think we should do our own part to leave the earth a better place, of course, right? That being said, the real appeal to me, my own internal angle, is kind of upsetting the embedded interest, the monopoly, right? I like it. It appeals to me to be disruptive.
Yeah.
Ask my teachers, right? So
maybe that's why I like it too.
So I like that. That's always appealed to me, is like you could kind of take control back from people that are, you could argue they're
destroying the world.
Yeah, behaving in an oppressive fashion.
Right.
It's kind of your own way of saying, screw you guys. So that really appeals to me. That's kind of my own internal monologue on it. But as far as like environmental stuff, like, of course, do it, right? You should. Why not?
What's been the most surprising piece for you, or something you've heard from someone?
I mean, it still never ceases to amaze me how clueless people are about it, but I literally wouldn't have a job if they weren't, right? So it's okay.
Right.
And I have no problem breaking stuff down on a super, super basic level. I think what I've found the most surprising is how willing people are to pay cash for this sort of stuff, right? Like, I've been in solar forever, right? Back in 15, 16, pretty much everyone was financing these things, right? But here in Colorado, people are just buying them.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's only a third, right? I mean, like 2/3 are still financing, but that's substantial.
Yeah.
That's been surprising.
Huh.
Economy must be reasonably okay.
Well, I think this is a bit of a bubble, but
Sure.
particularly in this area for sure. But yeah, it has been so fascinating. What you said, like, it surprises you how much people don't know. When I first started doing it, I got quotes from 3 or 4 different companies, and everyone was basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you this, and then I was like, and Tesla is $10,000 cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a 12 to 18 month wait. It's like, well, nobody's explaining that. So that they could just do that. It's like, you go to the website and swipe your card, and no, you don't hear from anyone. So we're just, I guess, moral of the story is we're just bashing the new Twitter stock owner.
I worked for him for a long time. So.
You worked for it directly, or
at Tesla.
Got it. That must have been interesting, because that was right when the electric cars were becoming somewhat popular. No?
Yeah, I mean, they were already pretty popular, right? I was working at Tesla like 15, 16, 17, 18 area, but mostly in solar.
Yeah.
They kind of changed the model there a little bit. Wanted me to sell cars. Wasn't into it. Bought one, though.
What was the overlap between people who drove that car and had solar? Was there much?
Kind of a lot, right?
Yeah.
So the people that are looking at this from an environmental perspective, right? They want to buy an EV because they want to, do the right thing and drive a clean vehicle. But at the end of the day, if you're charging it with coal that's running 200 miles over copper lines, like, are you really helping? Like, a little, right? But really, like, the last piece of that puzzle is feeding it from your own roof with solar or something like that, right? And so that really did appeal to a lot of people, where they would come in, they would buy a car, and then they'd be like, honey, what do you think? I'll just put the solar up too, right? And so that was a common thing, yeah.
What do you think the future is?
I think a lot of that, I think decentralized grids, right? I think this concept where we're going to have Pueblo burning coal and pumping it up to Fort Collins is an absurd. I'm not sure that's exactly accurate, but you get the concept. I think decentralized grids where people are kind of doing their own. Someone's just got to figure out batteries like in a big way that you can put big storage systems, even if it's, microgrids in neighborhoods or whatever.
Can you explain the concept of a battery?
Sure. Battery is just basically a way to store excess solar energy to use later, right? And we're already at a point where you can get a battery for a reasonable price that will power your house pretty much on a day-to-day basis. But right now we're kind of using the grid to store excess energy from month to month, right? Like if you make too much power in March, how do you store it till June? Well, right now you need $250,000 of batteries to accomplish that. And so it's not economical.
So right now the process is you basically put it back and get a credit. Is that correct?
Yeah, you sell it onto the grid. The neighbors use it. They have no idea, but they're using your excess solar during the day.
Cool. What are some misconceptions people might have about solar?
Oh, I mean, you still got some holdouts that think it like doesn't work or that it's a scam. And it's like, obviously, that's obviously not true, right? A lot of people think they're all made in China. That's not true either, right? It's common, but it's not true. Certainly not in our case. And you get some people that think it never pays back, but it's mathematically provable, right? So I would say like the solar IQ in Metro Denver is actually quite good, right? So most people, I can go into their house and we could just talk about like nuance, like what's different between your stuff versus other stuff, right? And like, let's do a design. Versus, 8 years ago, I had to be like, okay, this is a solar panel.
We're going to put it on your roof.
So, yeah.
When you walked me through the numbers, I was like, oh my God, this is insane. Like I think it was like over a 25-year period saving $80,000. And that's not even accounting for the a value add to the property.
Right.
So, and my dad or my parents paid off in 6 years.
Not bad.
Moving back to the intersection of endurance and business and the environment, I'm curious how your experience as an endurance athlete, as a runner, as a hiker, as a mountain biker, parlays into making you a better employee. Have you thought about that, or do you think that that's true?
I mean, I think there's a certain level of motivation or intensity, right? But it's not like I walk into people's houses like hulking and just high-fiving.
I don't mean being an athlete and just like having massive biceps and quads or whatever. I mean the mental aspect of it.
I would say for sure, like you've got to be highly motivated to do this job. It's constant, right? It's emails, it's texts, it's calls, it's crashing drones into the tree, all sorts of stuff. It's a constant, right? I mean, I work till midnight all the time, right? It's like a normal thing. And so like you do have to be like devoted to it for sure. But it's cool. It's something I'm passionate about, same as running, right? So there's overlap there.
How do you balance the working till midnight with having a partner, having hobbies, having other things to do?
I do my best. I'm not sure it's perfect, but no, I mean, like I said, the way that they do this here is they just want to make sure Freedom particularly treats you like an adult. They expect you to behave like an adult. And so therefore you have the liberty to, you know what, I'm going to take Tuesday off. I'm just going to go running all day. It's like, I don't have to ask people. I don't have to bother people, right? I could just take it off and dip into the woods, take a 3-day, 4-day weekend, whatever, take a week, take a month. I probably would get yelled at if I took a month, right? But, with some planning maybe. But no, like they expect you to do your own work-life balance and also be, performing member of the team. So, and that's frankly why, one of the reasons I'm still here. It's a good gig. They let you do whatever.
Yeah, I think we saw a bit of change in corporate lifestyle in 2020, or a lot of change in 2020.
You could say that.
And it's allowed for a lot more remote work and whatnot. And I think we've sort of swung back in the direction of like work has blended into life. And like I sleep, I don't know, a 50-foot walk from where I spend the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And without being intentional around it. Like I work East Coast hours on mountain time. And so I'm up at 6 and like I very well could be working till 6 if I didn't realize, okay, I need to stop. And I try not to do that. I try and be done around 3 or 4 or whatever when my colleagues on the East Coast are getting ready for dinner. But I think there's so much intentionality that needs to be presented, particularly when you're passionate about what you do for work, right? The first 2 years of my working career, I worked for a startup or like a very bootstrap startup. And I worked till 2 a.m. every day for, I don't know, like 18 months. And I was like, this is it. I was also 22 years old. So like didn't really need much sleep at the time, and didn't get hangovers. So I could like still go out and party at the same time. But then I was like, this is not it. This is unsustainable. And I need to find some hobbies outside of work. And so I think it's so fascinating being intentional about like taking a week off or taking a 3-day weekend or a 4-day weekend or whatever. And it makes you a better employee, it makes you a better person. And being a better person makes you a better employee. And I think that a lot of people find this kind of stuff selfish. And I think it's the opposite. I think it's intentionally avoiding being a lesser part of the team, right?
I couldn't agree more. And you could prove it statistically. If you were to look at sales numbers for someone like me, right? I took a week in the fall and went to the North Cascades in Washington, hiked, ran, rented a boat, did a bunch of stuff, right? I came back and I sold solar panels to everyone I talked to for the next week, right? You've reset yourself.
Right.
And so it makes you a more productive person. So it's no wonder that they don't mind that you.
Yeah, no, I love this so much. I've had the same conversation with our CEO, and in meetings, he'll be like, running is the anchor of Jonathan's day. And he's like, sort of says it in jest, but also like, okay, he's out running at 10 a.m. again. And it's like, yeah, he's out running at 10 a.m. again. Cause like, that's how I ground myself. And the rest of it is possible because of that. So I think the point we're both trying to make here is if you're listening, the act of putting yourself first is not selfish. It's actually allowing you to be a better version of yourself for everyone else around you. I mean, you can't do it all the time, but I think being intentional around it is definitely helpful.
Totally agree. And you almost feel shame sometimes in the winter when it's 4 degrees and you see the guy running and I'm like, oh man, I really have no excuse. This guy's doing it,
I once ran by someone in a rainstorm in Boston, and I like vividly remember where I was. This guy was standing underneath the awning at Barcelona Wine Bar in Brookline on Beacon Street, smoking. And he's like, I was running by. He's like, man, you're dedicated. I was like, no, I'm not. You're dedicated. I'm having fun. This is improving my health.
Running in the rain can actually be kind of cool.
It's definitely cool. And it's probably more enjoyable than standing in the rain.
Sure. Oh, sure. Yeah, you stay warm,
Right.
Except in Colorado, you're usually running away from a lightning storm on a 14er.
So I learned...
That'll make a trail runner out of everyone.
Yeah, I learned very early on that you're not supposed to be in the big mountains after 1 o'clock?
Yeah, 1, 2. So
I'm going to cite this same trip to Uray again. I guess I need to go back there, but I was pacing a friend in 100 Miler this past summer, and I didn't know if my leg would start. I was thinking it was supposed to run like 20 miles or 15 miles. I didn't know if it would start at midnight, 3 a.m., 6 a.m., noon, whatever. This race has 44,000 feet of gain, so it's pretty variable. Anyway, I started at 6 a.m., and we were running. It took 7+ hours to go 12 miles. And so it's getting to be, we started at 6? I started at 6:30 or so. Anyway, it's like 1 o'clock and we see thunder rolling in. I was like,
Ruh-roh.
I don't run in thunder. Kelly, move. And it's terrifying being up there on the ridge, exposed when it's dumping rain. And thunder and lightning.
Hailing, right?
Hailing,
you feel the temp swing,
You can
and you're like,
see
this is
it.
trouble.
Yeah. What's the coolest trail you've run out here recently?
Out here in Colorado?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
I got to pitch the Colorado Board of Tourism on this.
Oh God. I don't know. My favorite local one is Staunton State Park up. It's like Pine Bailey area. That's a really cool.
Yeah.
You can go down to waterfalls and up on ridges. You can see Pikes Peak and all sorts of. That's a really cool one. That's like in my neighborhood practically. So I do that one like kind of a lot. But I ran in like the late fall. I went and did McCurdy, which is like near that Lost Creek stuff. That was really sweet. Just nice switchbacks back and back and back and back. Really sweet.
So is this something you want to do for the rest of your life?
Oh, for sure. As long as my body will allow it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to keep pushing it too, Yeah. As I get older, I don't seem to be having much of a harder time because I keep doing it. Right. So
that's the thing. Stasis is the enemy. If you stop, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah. Like if you ride chairlifts all winter and go skiing and not run, for example.
Saying it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have some friends who have said like, oh, running, how is it fun? It's never easy. It doesn't make sense.
Tell them they got to get over mile 7 and they'll find out.
Yeah. Well, or like day 14. Again, it's like the consistency aspect of it. Like once you stop and start again, then it's challenging. But if you don't stop with obviously rest and recovery and all this kind of stuff, you can go forever.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, I did Pikes Peak too. That was cool. That's a sweet one. From the back, from Manitou all the way up.
Oh, nice. I've heard good things about the Pikes Peak Marathon.
Oh, that's on the road, right?
No, isn't it trail? I think it's 13 miles straight up and then 13 miles straight down. Yeah. You get to the top of Pikes Peak.
Yeah.
So that seems challenging. It's what, 14,000 feet?
Shocking. Yeah.
You go up the railroad cogs?
I mean, I saw him at the top. Yeah.
That's a fun adventure. Sandy, it's been fun chatting with you on all of this stuff and more. I want to thank you for what you've done for me personally, but also the ability to introduce this to my audience and their friends and families. And I think that, again, if you're listening to this and something has resonated and you're interested, please reach out. My vision that I was perfectly honest with Freedom Solar, my vision that I explained to Freedom Solar was we're going to work together and then you're going to work with the entire endurance community. And it's a new partner into the endurance community. And I want it to be successful because it's good for the world. And I think that having a company that their entire mission is let's improve the environment, supporting people who do what they love in nature, I think that's a perfect ecosystem. So if you're curious about solar, if you're curious about anything we've talked about, the trails Sandy's mentioned, please feel free to reach out. They operate in what states?
Texas, Colorado, Virginia, and Florida, and a couple more on the way.
And there are plenty of other amazing companies that also do solar. They're not as amazing. Just kidding, or maybe not. But happy to help with questions. Like I said, I was confused as to why it wasn't explained to me, and I want to pay that forward. So, Sandy, thanks for helping me do that and much more.
Appreciate you having me on. It's an honor.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf. Show notes have been written by Ruby Wiles and is managed by Emily Holland. It takes a village.